And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Hey, what are you looking at? Oh, that's right. You're looking at me because you've joined us for yet another Liberty podcast. Today being the 2nd of February, 2024, the shortest month of the year. Although I think this year we get a 29th of February too as a bonus, and it's a big month. It's President's Day weekend is this month, isn't it? So we get to celebrate Lincoln and Washington's birthday, which they two more worthy presidents of celebration have there ever been. I don't think there's any debate about that. But welcome back. It's great to have you in to the cozy studio. I just returned from a little commercial air travel, and relatively uneventful. But I have to report that it was very clear to me that there are sectors of the population that continue to feel uncomfortable in big public settings without covering their faces, their trembling little faces, with masks. The worthless masks that scientific research has shown do nothing to protect you from airborne viruses. Those masks. Well, there were quite a few of them in the airport. I flew back from beautiful Southwest Florida into Charlotte yesterday, and I believe there were two main categories of mask wearers. Young snowflakes, 30-somethings, who clearly have been convinced that maybe for the rest of their life, just to be careful, they need to mask up, especially when traveling by air. And then there were older couples, probably Democrats, who have been boosted like 9 times and still feel that, just as a precaution, they need to wear that big beak over their face and look totally ridiculous. One of the flight attendants on my American Airlines flight, probably in her early 30s, was wearing a mask. And just as well, because a lot of those flight attendants, especially the younger ones, really, they harbor a lot of disdain toward the paying customer, shall we say. And so with their mask on, you can't really see that. All you see is their beady little eyes. And but I was nice to her. She didn't spill any coffee on me, which I'm sure, since I was reading the Wall Street Journal, she might have been tempted to do. But anyway, if you're flying soon, just be prepared to see the masked morons darting around in the terminal and boarding your aircraft to hopefully exotic destinations. All right, we've got to get to a not so exotic destination. That would be the Washington, D.C. swamp, the nation's capital, if you will. And while some of you may not have been looking, because they do things at night in Congress, they took a vote on Wednesday night up there in the U.S. House of Representatives. And it was called you're going to love the name of this bill. If it sounds pretty straightforward, then you know it's a lie. The Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act. American Families and Workers. I think the distinction there is that a lot of these families who are going to be benefiting from this act don't have people in them who work, but we'll get to that in a moment. So while nobody was looking up there on the hill, they took a little boat, and a big majority, both Democrats and Republicans, voted to pass the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act, including 169 House Republicans voting to pass a bill that is a crock. And I'll say no more because I might run afoul of FCC regulations involving speech and profanity. They're going along with the premise that this bill provides tax relief. These would be our Republican friends. But a key pillar of the legislation is the child tax credit. Now, what does that mean? Have a child, get a tax break. Have 2 children, get 2 tax breaks. Have 6 children, you don't need an income because it all comes from Uncle Sam. But changes to tax credit eligibility by a parent, and most of these are single moms who they're targeting, that's not tax relief. They're payouts to Americans who owe 0 income tax. So they're giving a tax relief little carrot to people who don't even pay income tax. Well, wouldn't you know it, among the 169 Republicans who voted for this little doozy, this little bomb to our already ticking debt disaster, it's another little salvo of flame into the flaming dumpster fire that is our economy and is our national debt. Among those who voted for that was our very own Richard Hudson of the 9th Congressional District, representing Moore County, all of us here in North Carolina. But is he? Is it the House of Representatives or the House of Reprobates? You have to wonder. But I went to some of the experts at the Heritage Foundation to give you some insight into what this bill really is about. Because, who's got time to really dive into these things, even though it's important. And being an American is not a spectator sport, but that's why you're here, and that's why I'm here. A major feature of this bill is an expansion of the tax credit, as I said, for children. This expansion was necessary, according to Republican Think, to secure Democrat support for corporate tax provisions. They never want to help businesses because they think they're all evil, because they're not capitalists. The welfare-related child's tax credit, and make no mistake about it, a child tax credit is welfare. They're not a minor extension of the Tax Cuts and Job Act, but a massive departure from the status quo. Together, they move the country in the wrong direction on welfare policy after years of pro-family, pro-work progress. Pro-family, pro-work. That's a conservative principle, which a bunch of Republicans voting for this bill did not embrace. Far from a program that incentivizes work and family formation, this Ways and Means Committee bill, sponsored by a Republican out of Missouri, nonetheless, expands so-called refundable child tax credits and simply expands a traditionally flawed welfare state. The bill is based on the premise that more welfare money must be spent primarily to subsidize single parents. Although the bill claims its aim is to provide tax relief to families with children, there is little tax relief in it for working families. Instead, more than 90% of the family benefits would be new cash welfare payments to families who pay no federal income taxes and little or no Social Security tax. Nearly all family benefits in the bill are overt cash welfare payments, not tax relief. And they think we're that dumb that we're not going to figure that out like in 2 seconds. If passed, and when they say if passed, it has passed the House, but now it goes to the Senate where it still has an uphill battle. The bill would greatly expand the additional child tax credit, the ACTC, not to be confused with AC/DC, the metal band of another generation. The additional child tax credit is a simple cash welfare benefit program that has nothing to do with taxes. The current ACTC program has a weak work requirement riddled with extensive fraud. The committee's bill would deliberately weaken this already weak work requirement. Under current law, in 2023, a single mother with 2 school-aged children earning $15,000 per year, the mother, not the children, would receive $15,476 in welfare benefits from the Earned Income Tax Credit, the additional child tax credit, food stamps, and the school nutrition program. So you take those four together, and that adds up to more than $15,000. No questions asked. Go to the mailbox, get the check, take it to the bank. In addition, this family that was mentioned here, the single mom with two kids, this family, hardly a family, would be eligible for Medicaid coverage worth on average around another nearly $15,000. So that's $30,000, no questions asked. The bill embraces the premises and goals of the Biden plan. He was anointed president, you might remember, in 21 on a January day. The bill embraces the premises of the Biden plan to greatly increase cash welfare payments, predominantly for single parents, while weakening or removing work requirements. The bill sets the groundwork for a future compromise that would fully enact child allowance programs, which would become nothing more than welfare, nothing more than universal income, which is what the left really wants. They just call it by another name. The bulk of what is being described as middle-class tax relief is in fact an expansion of welfare benefits. The legislation does not fix existing work requirements for individuals to receive the additional child tax credit, which, by the way, is different from the ordinary child tax credit, which goes exclusively to individuals and couples who pay no income tax. Sadly, this feature was begun in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. That was the Trump era tax cut, which, like any bill, is going to have some flaws in it, no matter which presidency it is passed during. This provision would amount to a whopping 32% expansion of this welfare credit by 2026. That would be the additional child tax credit. At which point, in typical Washington fashion, these handouts would expire. And all of a sudden, there would be a crisis, a political crisis, because the left would say, if it expires, tens of millions of people will lose their brand new welfare benefit that we just gave them in 2024. And that would create the perfect storm for yet more expansion and permanence of welfare. The new tax and welfare bill would accelerate the phase-in so that, for example, a taxpayer with $10,000 of annual income claiming 3 children could receive a $3,375 benefit instead of $1,125, despite paying zero income tax. This additional benefit would be on top of $4,500 in earned income tax credit benefits. And what will this do? Of course, it'll exacerbate all the existing fraud that is part of these programs. No matter how compassionate they claim to be, many of them are exploited by fraudsters, otherwise known as non-working Americans. The other thing about a bill like this is it makes a lot of assumptions that we really need to focus on for a moment. According to reporting by CNN, so take that, for what it's worth, the package would lift at least 500,000 children out of poverty and improve the financial situation of about 5 million more children who would remain below the poverty line once the proposal is fully in effect in 2025. Overall, the deal would not have much of an impact on the federal budget. It will reduce revenues by less than $400 million over 10 years. You know how much $400 million over 10 years is in terms of federal spending and budget and deficits? It's like the change you have in the cup holder in your car, okay? But here's the problem with the assumption that it would lift these children out of poverty. That presumes that these single moms who are getting this free money are using it to the benefit of their children. Do we know that? Do we know that it's not being used to purchase drugs, cell phone coverage, clothing, automobiles? We don't know. There's no accountability whatsoever. Let's also consider the fact that some Republicans have voiced concerns that the proposal would disincentivize work or allow undocumented immigrants to claim the credit. Allow undocumented immigrants to claim the child credit. But House Ways and Means Chair Jason Smith has stressed that the deal maintains the minimum earning threshold needed to begin to claim the credit, which is only $2,500. Now, I just want to tell you something. As we know, hourly wages have been going up dramatically because the left says they're too low. And even though they may put people out of business like restaurants, they're going up in places like California. Do you realize how little work you would have to do to earn a threshold of $2,500 in income? I mean, you could work like 2 weeks in an entire year to meet that threshold. By the way, Chairman Smith says, don't worry, the children of these illegal immigrants would have to have Social Security numbers in order for their families to receive the tax credit. Well, now, do you know how easy it is to file for a Social Security number? I mean, it's no questions asked. Anybody can get one, just like anybody can get an ID to vote, but that's another topic for another day. There is one redeeming element in this whole mess that I've just described to you in under 16 minutes. Pretty good, huh? This bill, if passed by the Senate, would bring to a halt the filing of backdated claims for the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which was a COVID-19 program that has been subject to widespread fraud. The provision of removing these backdated claims for employee retention tax credits would save the taxpayers more than $78 billion. So that's good. As of January 31, 2 days ago, no more filing for this employee retention tax credit. Remember what that was? During COVID, when the government shut all your businesses down, you could get a tax credit of 50% of whatever you were paying that employee to try to keep your business afloat. And businesses are still applying for it in 2023 going into 24. Because why? They're committing blatant fraud. They're stealing our money to support themselves, even though the need for that support has vanished with the resumption of somewhat normal life in the United States of America. Okay, let's move on. Senator Rand Paul of the great state of Kentucky. He has been one of the leading adversaries, if not downright critics, the worst nightmare of Anthony Fauci, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who ought to be defrocked as a doctor. But Paul continues to worry about what was the likely origin of the COVID crisis of 2020 into 21, which was lab experiments with viruses known as gain of function. Gain of function. At the end of last year, Rand Paul made a speech to the Hillsdale College group, and parts of which were published in their weekly newsletter. And I just want to read an excerpt of this. This is a really important point that Rand Paul makes because, we're not out of the woods on these people messing around with viruses. A growing number of virologists and other scientists worry that a lab leak will happen again, and with even more serious consequences. With COVID, the mortality rate was far less than 1%, but we still had to, stay in our homes for like 2 years. With COVID, the experiments are now being carried out with viruses that have the potential for mortality rates between 15 and 50%. Wow. The potential for disaster cannot be overstated. Right now, people can order synthetic DNA on the internet, and if they know what they're doing, they can make the polio virus, among many others. Well, there's a comforting thought. And there are increasing numbers of individuals who have the know-how, according to a MIT biochemist. They have the know-how to, quote, let's see. Oh, okay. Here's how they have the know-how, according to this biochemist. The U.S. grants 125 doctoral degrees in virology each year, accounting for 1/3 of the total worldwide. at least 4 times as many individuals with degrees in related fields possess similar skills. So they're all over the place. The required information is publicly available due to taxpayer-funded initiatives to identify all the viruses in the world. With the support of people like Bill Gates, the U.S. has been the top international funder of pandemic virus identification for decades. This should give us pause. These programs involve digging rare viruses out of caves where humans might never encounter them and transporting them to major metropolitan areas, manipulating viruses to make them more dangerous and transmissible, and publishing the resulting knowledge to the world. Even if the goal is preventing future pandemics, the risk-benefit ratio doesn't add up. While advocates for identifying the world's viruses argue that the knowledge gained will aid in developing vaccines, decades of virus identification have been fruitless, as no human vaccine has been developed in advance of a human epidemic. If we continue down this path, the MIT biochemist believes that, quote, deliberate pandemics will kill many more people than identification could save, end quote. Rand Paul continues, to think that we can prevent future pandemics even as we continue to seek, catalog, and manipulate dangerous viruses is the height of hubris. Over the last few years, public health experts were wrong about almost everything, Anthony Fauci. If we are to avoid these kinds of catastrophes in the future, we must reform government and rein in out-of-control scientists and their enablers. Yes, we must. Thank you, Senator Paul. Now, many of you, we were just talking about getting back to normal, and that means for many people, they're finally being forced to go back to their offices and do some work. Can you believe it? Now, that's good news for one industry, the food catering business, right? Because they were kind of, they were having some lean times when nobody was going to the office. Because, you don't call a catering company to bring lunch to your house for yourself and your cat or your dog. So the caterers were sucking wind, but now they're back and they're thriving and they're full of themselves again. There's one leading company called Easy Cater. The Boston-based company announced just last week that it has launched business size and, quote, diversity of ownership filters, end quote, in the effort to help corporate customers more easily find small and minority-owned catering providers. So now it's not really, considered PC to merely want good food delivered in a timely way at a good price. I mean, that's not what you're catering for. No. You're looking for small businesses to help and minority-owned businesses. Easy Cater created the filters to promote Black, Asian American, LGBTQ plus veteran and women-owned businesses, among others, in response to a National Restaurant Owner report, which found that 41% of restaurants are minority-owned but still face numerous challenges. Well, I've noticed that, at least in my experiences as kind of a foodie and visiting restaurants all over Moore County, that what brings me back to a restaurant again and again is great food and great service. And if it's Martian owned, if it's robot controlled, fine, I'll go back if the food is good and the service is prompt and the prices are not, through the roof. But no. Oh, no. To incorporate more of these businesses into its network, Easy Cater has partnered with Eat Okra, not Oprah, Eat Okra, a restaurant database with a network of 18,000 Black-owned restaurants, some of which aren't yet on the Easy Catering site. So, if you want to overcome the guilt of ordering from a caterer because the food is good and the service is reliable, just dial up Easy Cater and they will send you to all kinds of restaurants that you may never have heard of, and shame on you for not knowing where they are and who they are. And by the way, if I'm a veteran-owned restaurant, I do not want to be lumped in with these organizations who say that they're being denied customers, because they are oppressed and they are overlooked by the racists who own businesses that use caterers. If I'm a veteran-owned business, I don't want to be lumped into that category, because all the veteran-owned businesses I know are not victimized businesses. They don't feel like they're owed anything from anybody. They're just happy to have the freedom to live in America and run a business and be successful of their own volition. All right, folks, I got another doozy for you. You're going to love this as our final item of the day. Of course, it comes out of the land of Lincoln. I used to call it the wasteland of Lincoln, which it really is. The People's Republic of Illinois, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's a state lawmaker up there. His name is Justin Slaughter, very aptly named, because he's slaughtering common sense every time he opens his mouth. He introduced an amendment to the Illinois Vehicle Code earlier this week that would have prohibited police officers from stopping drivers for minor speeding and improper lane use violations. Because, pulling somebody over for speeding, well, it's racist. Don't you know that? Come on, folks. But you know what? No sooner did he float the amendment to the code out there than he decided to withdraw the suggested amendment. And why? Because criticism came flooding in from all over the place, all over the law enforcement community, including the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, which wrote in a social media post that the proposal would, quote, negatively impact traffic safety and public safety. No kidding. But Mr. Slaughter didn't think of that when he brought the bill to the fore. This is so funny, though. In 2022 in Chicago, the number of black drivers stopped for violations was 4 times that of white drivers, Slaughter said. The same year, outside of Chicago, black drivers comprised 21.5% of all traffic stops, despite making up only 9.5% of the population outside of the city. Well, what can I say? His original proposal, here's the meat of the issue. His original proposal stated that police would not pull over a vehicle for failing to display registration plates or stickers. Oh no, can't be bothered with that. They would not be pulled over for operating with an expired registration sticker. They would not be pulled over for failing to comply with certain vehicle lamp requirements, like your headlights. Can you believe this? They would not be pulled over for excessive tint and defective mirrors, like blacked out windows, which, usually say that something's not right on the other side of that glass. And last but not least, would not be pulled over for speeding except when the offense would qualify as a misdemeanor or felony, meaning up to 25 miles per hour over the speed limit. Now, think about that. You're in a 25 mile an hour zone, okay, where maybe there are children, it's a residential area. He's saying that until you're going 51 miles per hour, it would be racist to pull you over for speeding. Racist. That's the world we're living in. So you can't make it up. You're seeing this happen in other cities where they're in California, unless you steal more than $1,000 worth of stuff from a store, it's just a misdemeanor. $999 is okay. And now this clown in Illinois thinks that pulling people over for speeding in a residential area, like going 50 miles an hour down your street, how'd you like that, where you live, that is somehow a heinous and racist act that must be stopped. Well, don't feel so great about this being taken off the table for now, because somebody is going to read about it in another state like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California. They're going to say, you know what? That's a heck of an idea. Why didn't we think of that? And they may get away with it. So stay vigilant, my friends. stay ever vigilant. Hey, I want to remind you all that if you're a Moore County Republican, that they have scheduled their county convention for March 2nd, which, according to my math, is precisely 1 month from now. It'll be on a Saturday. It will be a morning event that will probably go for several hours. And I believe they're still trying to determine where to hold the event, but we'll get back to you with details on that. Hey, thanks for joining us for the first Liberty podcast of the month of February. And we hope that you'll come back and join us next time for another version of the podcast where we speak the truth, where we enlighten and inform. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.